Hi, and welcome to another LRCC Soundbite. This is my third week of telling stories from a book in the Bible called Daniel. One of those stories is quite famous and involves lions, but again, that's not this week. This week it's a story that actually doesn't even have Daniel in it, but it centres on his friends. They were in our story a couple of weeks ago. I introduced them as Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah. What I didn't mention then was that those were their original Hebrew names. When they were taken into exile, the Babylonians gave them new Babylonian names. And in this story, those are the names that are usually remembered. So their names were changed to Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. Now the king, Nebuchadnezzar, was powerful and he knew it. He ruled a huge empire. It seemed like nothing could stop him, and he would do things to remind the people that he was the one in charge. One day, he decided to build himself a huge statue just outside the capital city. A huge statue of himself. And, it was big. It was about 27 metres high, we think, so if you live near here, I reckon that's probably about the size of the tower at St Augustine's Church. It's you're not going to miss it, are you? Now, having set up this statue, he decided he was going to have a dedication ceremony, and he required all of his officials to attend. And at the point of dedication, they were to bow down and worship his statue. A couple of weeks ago, when I was talking about these three friends, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, we found that they didn't want to eat the food that was offered them by the king because it went against their customs and the instructions they'd had from God. So instead, they had vegetables and water, and God had looked after them and they grew healthy and strong. Another of God's laws was don't bow down and worship something except God. So this idea of worshipping the statue of the king was a bit of a problem for them. And they took a stand, quite literally. When everyone else bowed down, they didn't. They remained standing, respectful, but they weren't worshipping the statue. Some of the other officials were somewhat jealous of the high position that these three Jews had attained, and they decided they were going to report this to the king. The king had issued a warning that anyone who didn't bow down and worship would be thrown into a fiery furnace. So the king had Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego brought to him and told them, bow down and worship. But they said, no, we only worship God. This made the king very, very angry. So he told his servants to heat up the furnace 7 times hotter than usual, then tie these men up and throw them in immediately. And that's what happened. Apparently the furnace was so hot that the soldiers who threw them in died from the heat. But inside the furnace, the king saw something rather strange. He saw the men walking around unhurt. But more than that, he saw a 4th man with them. The king shouted out to them, come out. And they did. Apparently they didn't even smell of smoke. And the king was amazed and ordered that no one throughout the entire empire should ever dare say a word against their God, because this God had protected them regardless of what happened, and he protected them because they obeyed and followed him. And I think that's the point of the story, really. God really does protect those who love him. It's rarely as dramatic as this story, but to be honest, any time we're in trouble and God steps in is amazing, even if it's only to you when you know that's happened. But do you remember I said the king said he saw a 4th man in the flames? Many people believe that might have been Jesus himself, directly intervening and being there with Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. The honest truth is we don't know who that 4th person was, but whoever it was, I'm sure that those 3 friends were amazed to be looking out through the flames and knowing that God was there with them. This is a story that encourages us to simply trust God, because he's always there. Trust him, and he will be with us. God bless you. I'll see you next time.